All right, we'll begin our lesson on 4.2 standard form of a quadratic function. So yesterday we had what was called vertex form. So just a quick refresher on vertex form. All right, because we will see a little bit of both today. So the general form for that, you can write f of x. You could also write y equals. That part won't make a difference. But we have an a value in front of those parentheses squared, and that's going to tell us a stretch, reflection, compression. If there isn't one there, then there is no stretch, reflection, or compression. We have x minus h is just your general number plus k, just a general number where your vertex is the point h comma k. So h is that x coordinate, k is that y coordinate. That was our big focus form yesterday. If your a value is greater than 0, that means you're going to have a U-shaped graph, so it's going to open upward. Which means that it would have a minimum. If your a value is less than 0, so it's a negative number, that's a reflection, so our graph will flip upside down or open downward. Which gives that graph a maximum. All right, so that's still some review from yesterday. We just didn't really, we only talked about this general form in kind of our last example yesterday. We're going to start to see more with this a value here moving forward into our quadratics unit. Today we're going to talk more about a y-intercept, so I want to throw that in here. So remember, that is the point where you cross the y-axis. So if I was trying to find the y-intercept for an equation in vertex form, I must plug in 0 in place of the x to find y. All right, so those are the big things to notice with vertex form. Standard form is the new one that we're going to add on today. So we're going to make a few notes about that, and then we'll look at some examples. So standard form, once again, you can write it as f of x or y equals, that just represents your output, is ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay. If you notice, they both have an a. So a means the same thing in both. All right, so a here is also going to say, well, if a is greater than 0, that's going to be that opening up, has a minimum. If a is less than 0, that's going to open it down, and it has a maximum. So that does not change. Okay, you can write any parabola in either form. So they're going to have the same a value, whether it's in vertex form or whether it was put in standard form. All right. What's nice about vertex form is we can see the vertex by looking at it. I know those numbers represent the vertex. I cannot see what the vertex looks like when I look at this equation. The b and the c are not the vertex numbers. All right, so the vertex is going to be more difficult to find because you actually have to do some math to calculate it. So to find the x coordinate of your vertex, you must use negative b over 2a. So I'm using the b value, whatever number is in front of that x. I'm taking the opposite, and then I'm dividing it by 2 times whatever number is in front of my x squared. All right, and that will work every time you are in standard form. So it's a little bit more work than just looking at the problem and seeing the transformations. Because when it's in standard form, I can't tell the left, right, shift, or any of that. All I can tell is compression, stretch, and reflection. Okay? But something that is nice, so if we think back to how you find the y-intercept and you plug in 0 for x to find y, if I replace my x's up here with 0, that would make that whole part 0, that whole part 0. So my y-intercept is the point 0, c. So whatever your c value is, that's going to be your y-intercept. So that's going to come in handy when we have to graph our points. In Math Excel, it's going to ask you to graph that vertex. So we'll have to use that negative b over 2a to come up with that. And then we could use the y-intercept pretty quickly to find another point. All right, when I'm in vertex form, I cannot tell what the y-intercept is by looking, so it'll take me more time to find another point, but the vertex is easy to see. So pros and cons of each form, but we need to be familiar with both. Okay? All right, so we'll go ahead and take a look here. We're going to practice 2 graphs. We did a lot of graphs yesterday, so I wanted you to have some graph paper. Today I just want 2, and we're just going to plot 2 points and kind of make the U shape. So I didn't print anything for you. We'll just do it as a quick sketch. All right, so we're going to graph y equals 2x squared plus 8x minus 2. There's no parentheses squared. I can't tell if it's shifted left or right or up or down. That's my standard form, okay? All that is telling me is my A is 2, my B is 8, my C is negative 2. So those things will help me find some information that I will need for my graph. All right, some things that you'll have to find for each problem, just like yesterday. We'll want to find the vertex. We'll want to find the axis of symmetry. If there's a minimum or maximum value, it's one or the other, right? Do you know which way this graph opens up if I look at the A value without even graphing? My A is 2. It's positive, it opens up. All right, so positive opens up, it's a smiling graph. Negative opens down, it's frown, okay? So we know since it's opening down, we're gonna have a minimum value. So we'll want to find that value. And then the one that we're going to add on today is finding the y-intercept. Okay? All right, so let's start with the vertex. So I cannot tell what the vertex is right now. I need to use negative b over 2a. So that's going to be a little fancy formula that you will just have to end up remembering or memorizing for this. So I'm going to take negative b over 2a. So my b is 8, so I will use a negative 8. My a is 2, so I will take 2 times 2. So I'm taking, make sure you multiply your 2 and 2 first here. So I'm taking negative 8, dividing it by 4, I get negative 2. That gives me the x coordinate of my vertex. Okay? I still need the y coordinate of my vertex. So if I know the x coordinate, what could I do with that? Plug it back into the equation for x and find y. All right, so y equals, I've got 2 times negative 2 squared plus 8 times negative 2 minus 2. You are welcome to plug that into your calculator if you have a nice calculator that has exponents, that has parentheses, and you're putting it all like so. If you're using just like a computer calculator or a cell phone calculator, you might want to do this one step at a time. Make sure you follow your order of operations because I'm going to need to take negative 2 squared first, which gives me 4, and then I can multiply by 2. So that would give me 8 plus a negative 16 minus 2. 8 minus 16 would be negative 8. Minus 2, I would get negative 10. So definitely more work when you're in standard form to find the vertex. Super nice if it's vertex form and you can look at it and go, yep, those are my numbers. Okay, so that part's a little bit annoying. Axis of symmetry, make sure you're still writing it as x equals. It's always going through that x coordinate of your vertex, so nothing different there. Your minimum value, that's always the y coordinate of your vertex, so that has not changed. We knew it was a minimum, remember, because this graph is opening up. My y-intercept, if you plug 0 in for x, that would make this 0, so you're left with negative 2, because your c value will always be your negative 2. So when you need to graph 2 points in Math Excel, I've got my 2 points. I've got my vertex, it has you graph that first, and then I've got my y-intercept. So today when we're making our sketch, we're just going to put those 2 points on a graph and make a little U-shape. And that's as detailed as we're going to get with our graph today. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm just going to label that point. And then the other point I need is 0, negative 2. Remember, this graph opens up. If it's helpful to put a little dashed line here, so you can kind of match a point on the other side and then make your U shape. That dashed line, remember, is your axis of symmetry. That's our quick sketch. Okay. We're going to practice one more graph and finding all these things for standard form. So our next problem, graph y equals negative 3x squared minus 6x plus 1. So once again, you'll be asked to find things like the vertex, axis of symmetry, I'll use that for short. This time, do we know which way this opens? It opens down because of the negative 3 for A. So if it opens down, I will have a maximum value this time. Let's do the range. We didn't do that last time. And then we'll also add the y-intercept. So those are the things I'm looking for. You're welcome to make your sketch first and then kind of fill those things in. Or you can fill those things in without making the sketch of the graph. Because we should know which way it opens, and that's really all we need other than the vertex. Okay, so the vertex. Once again, I have an A, B, and C. They do not help me just look at it to find the vertex. I have to use them to calculate the vertex. So I'm using that negative B over 2A. This time my B is a negative 6. So if I have a negative B, I'm doing the opposite of negative 6. So now it will be positive 6. And then my A value is negative 3. I don't need an opposite there, only for the B. So I'm taking 6 divided by negative 6, so I get a negative 1. It is possible to get some decimals or fractions there for that if it doesn't work out nicely. Just check Math Excel and see if it's telling you whether to put it as a fraction or a decimal. All right, but that can happen. It's not all going to be perfect each time. But that is the x coordinate of your vertex. We still need the y coordinate. So we'll take that and plug it in. So I'm taking negative 3 times a negative 1 squared minus 6 times negative 1 plus 1. Okay, follow your order of operations, or if you want, you can put that in a nice calculator that can do all those parentheses at once. Or I'm squaring the negative 1 to get a positive 1. Then I will multiply it by negative 3 to get negative 3. When I take negative 6 times negative 1, that's a positive 6. And then I will add 1. So 3 plus 1 would give me 4. So my y-coordinate would be 4. Okay? Axis of symmetry is always written as x equals because it's a line, and if I don't write x equals and I only put negative 1, that's just a number or part of the point. It is not a line. Okay? Maximum value would be the y-coordinate, so 4. Since this is opening down, my range y would have to be less than or equal to 4, since that is the max. My y-intercept, if I plugged in 0 for x, I would get 1 because my c is 1. Okay? So I've got my 2 points that I'll need to graph. I've got my y-intercept, and I've got my vertex to make a quick sketch of this graph. If you need to label them, you can. All right, so negative 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. That is the maximum, so it's going to open down. My y-intercept is 0, 1. Okay. If it helps to put this in, so I got that point on the other side to match with my y-intercept point. Then I've got my quick sketch of my graph. Okay. All right, so that's graphing. A little bit more steps to come up with the vertex. Y-intercept should hopefully be quick, so then you can do a quick 2 points. All right, the next thing that we will have to do is we are going to do a little more algebra than graphing. We are going to write the vertex form of the equation f of x equals negative x squared plus 4x minus 5. So you've been given standard form. We are going to put that into vertex form. So as a reminder, that y equals a times the quantity x minus h squared plus k, that's my vertex form. So the important thing for vertex form is I need the vertex, right? I need those numbers for h and k. So we will need to calculate the vertex, and then we can fill those in. All right, my b is 4. It is a positive 4, so I will use a negative 4 since it's negative b over 2. My a would be a negative 1. So I'm taking negative 4 divided by negative 2 is a positive 2. Remember, that is my x coordinate of my vertex. I will need to plug that 2 in to come up with my y coordinate. Notice I put that negative in front as a negative 1. I will have a lot of students that will write a negative 2 and square it. But you need to remember that the x value you're plugging in is a positive 2, and I must square it before I multiply by negative 1 its a value. So be very careful. I see a lot of students make mistakes when plugging this in. So 2 squared is 4, but when I multiply it by a negative 1, I get a negative 4 plus 8 minus 5 would give me 4 minus 5 is negative 1. So I have my vertex. So that means I have my h and my k. Do I know my a? I do. I just used it. It's the same A. This is the same graph. It's just a different form. So we've got what we need. Got y equals. My A would be a -1, because that's what it was in the beginning. I will do x minus 2 for my x coordinate. Don't forget the squared. If you forget that little squared in Math Excel, it's going to mark it wrong. If you forget it on a paper test, I will also mark that wrong. And then you got your y coordinate. So it's really just calculating the vertex and putting it in its form. All right, we'll do one more example, but we're breaking for lunch. Okay, for our last example, we are going to do the reverse of what we just did. So I'm now going to give you a problem in standard form or in vertex form, and you're going to change it to standard. So write the equation in standard form. For f of x equals -2 times the quantity x minus 2 squared plus 5. All right, so that's our vertex form to be in standard form. There's no parentheses squared. So basically, we're just going to simplify that by following some order of operations here. And first thing I'd do would be exponents. So that means I need to square x minus 2, which means I'm going to have to write it out twice. So once I've squared it, then I can multiply by -2. And then once I multiply by -2, then I can add 5. Okay, but first I'm multiplying that x minus 2 times x minus 2. So I'm distributing those, or maybe you were taught FOIL, that first, outer, inner, last trick to remember how to multiply these. So x times x would give me x squared. X times a -2 would be -2x. Then I need to distribute -2. So -2 times this x is a -2x. -2 times -2 would be a +4. So I distributed my x minus 2 times x minus 2. I have to write it out twice. Make sure you do not just try to square the x and square the -2, because then you will miss that part in the middle and you will get every problem wrong. Okay? So then I'll multiply by -2, and then I will add 5. So I'd get -2x squared, +4x, +4x, -8, plus 5. Combine my like terms, and that will give me my standard form. So -2x squared plus 8x minus 3. All right, so it doesn't matter what the form is. You're going to have the same graph. You should always have the same A value when you're done. All right, this is the y-intercept, remember, and then that 2, 5 would have been your vertex. And it had the same vertex in both and the same y-intercept in both. You just can't tell what they are by looking at the different equations necessarily. Okay, that's a wrap on our standard form lesson today.